I have a 10-year goal of where I want to be. I have core values of how I live my life. I have a strategy of how I'm going to get to my 10-year goal. That translates into a 3-year vision of where I want to be 3 years from now. Then I have a 1-year plan of things that I want to accomplish. And, the way this system works really well when you use EOS for yourself is you end up just defining the 5, 6, 7 things that are really super important that you have to get done this year. And the other stuff, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it gives you a ton of focus. And then I define quarterly goals and I check on them. Like this morning, I looked at them. I was like, okay, where am I on this one? I want to weigh this much. I want to, get involved in this project. I want to get this project done. I want to have this much cash flow. Like all of those were things I checked in on because they're the quarterly goal. And if I know if I'm on track for those, I'll be on track for my 10-year vision of where I want to be.
All right, Michael Girdley, welcome to the Intentional Wisdom Podcast.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I was thinking back to, I've been following you on Twitter for a while, big fan of your content. And I was thinking back to when did Michael Girdley first come across my radar screen? This one, I don't know if you will remember this, but this one, I was bidding in an NFT auction. And then all of a sudden, somebody named Girdley pops up on top of my bid, just outbid me. I was like, who the heck is this guy? I don't know if you remember, that was Jim O'Shaughnessy's OSAM Vest NFT auction that he did. But I did not end up winning that. I've actually told this story on this podcast before, so I won't recount it now. But someone who really actually deserved to win it and who gave the opportunity to somebody else who really deserved an opportunity, won it. I was purely going to use it for self-promotional purposes. So anyways.
I've gotten crushed in every single one of those. I'm always the first bidder. So my first million guys did one and I was the first bidder. And I just maybe the second bidder, I just came out and was like, okay, I'm just bidding my maximum price from day one. And then some guy came in and outbid me at the last minute by 10 times or something, where I was I'm okay to lose that one. But it was,
exactly.
It was fun. That one was super fun because you would get 5 minutes to do whatever you wanted on my first million. So actually my grand scheme was I was going to go take that NFT if I won it, and then I was going to shard it into 15-second NFTs. And so buy it wholesale and sell it at retail and then keep one for myself. And my 15 seconds of fame was going to be I can't believe I made money on this. Bye. That was my whole plan.
That would have been so cool. Hey, that is very consistent with I think I saw one of your threads. You were buy by the acre, sell by the foot or something like that.
Yeah. That was it. So
very cool. Too smart. You're too smart for that, right? They're no, that's not what we were intending to be on our podcast. But so anyhow, for our listeners who maybe are not as actively involved in getting outbid by you in NFT auctions, or super active on Twitter, maybe it would be good for you to just start with share a little bit about your background, just maybe a minute or two, so folks kind of know who you are, where you came from, and kind of what you're up to today.
Yeah, totally dig it. Cool. Yeah. So, I live in San Antonio, Texas, which is about an hour and a half southeast of Austin. So it's kind of the fourth city of Texas. But it's actually a really big city, home of the San Antonio Spurs and stuff like that. I lived here most of my life. So I grew up here. I was always a computer kid. My parents got me an Apple IIe when I was 12 years old. And that was $3,500 back in 1982. Wow. Or 1989, I guess, whenever that was. But
what's that in today's dollars?
I think it's 10 or 11 grand for a computer, just enormously expensive. So, my parents were entrepreneurs, great parents. I grew up, really a privileged life. Got to go to college and best high school in town and all that kind of stuff. So very, very fortunate, very lucky compared to what some other folks have gone through. And then, always a computer kid, went to college, back east, at a place called Lafayette College. It's about an hour outside of New York City. Majors in computer science there. When I graduated, all of my colleagues went and joined consulting firms, and I didn't do any of that. I ended up dorking around for a while, and then made my way out to the Bay Area. Worked in San Francisco kind of for the first phase of my career, which was working for other people. So I started as an engineer, so I have a technology background there in software and security, and then worked my way up to strategy and middle management roles. And then around the age of 27, 28, my newly met wife and I decided we wanted to leave the Bay Area. She was from Ohio. I was from San Antonio. She liked warm weather. And I said, I know a place that's really hot. So we moved back to San Antonio. And that was my first, foray into entrepreneurship. I got involved in entrepreneurship the old-fashioned way. I went to go work for our family business, took that over. I was the CEO of that. It's a fireworks retailing company. Was CEO of that for almost a decade. And then towards the end of that kind of tenure as CEO, I decided I wanted to be a serial entrepreneur. So I started other businesses. So I started a handful of businesses during that period of time, where I was CEO of those to get them off the ground, and then often found other leaders to run them. So that was phase two, really entrepreneurship. And then about 6-7 years ago, started doing what I do now, which is no operating roles at all. I work solely on kind of incubating, crafting, creating deals where it makes sense, setting companies up for long-term success, and then sitting on their boards. So think about it as like a super hands-on, like family office person with very targeted bets. So started doing that in earnest, that kind of 7 years ago. I'm now up to 9 operating companies where I have meaningful stakes, and then a bunch of other ones where I have non-meaningful stakes. So those span the gamut of everything from a drive-through coffee business that we started in 2020 with a couple partners to, a private equity firm that one of my partners is the managing partner of, to a training company, to our very first family business. Those are all still in my portfolio of things that I work on a pretty regular basis.
That's awesome. You got a lot of balls in the air. You got a lot of different, a lot of businesses you're involved in, but interesting that you've kind of extracted yourself out of the day-to-day operating role. But also interesting that you have had that experience before. And I think it makes for a really interesting background from which to look at different businesses, especially looking at sort of old world and new world businesses, having that technology background, but also having a background in something like fireworks. I mean, you kind of get the full gamut and also understand how businesses work. So it seems to me like that's one of your real superpowers, is just like really understanding the nuts and bolts of how businesses work. And I know you've got a podcast of your own. I just listened to another episode of that this morning on, actually it was your episode on the History Factory, where you dive into that business with those guys. Yeah. And I picked that one out because I've worked with those guys. I actually hired them in a former or in a role at my company and worked with those guys. It's super interesting. That's awesome. Business model those guys have. But anyhow, so with all these different ventures you're involved with, and we could honestly take a full episode and dive deep into just the coffee venture, probably. I mean, I've heard you talk a little bit about that, but that sounds like super fun, an interesting project. But I want to talk more about, your personal systems that you use to, get time and energy to operate all these. But maybe before we do that, one of the things that I think you're probably best known for is your ability to kind of take systems and standardize them across all of the different businesses that you're involved in. So before we go down the road of talking about Michael Girdley's personal systems by which he operates his life by, just give me a little bit of a sense, or give our listeners a little bit of a sense for these types of systems that you roll out between your businesses and why you do that. Yeah, totally dig it. Yeah. So, I mean, and use the word operate to say operate these businesses. I actually don't operate anything by the strict definition of operating. If I'm going into a business and being the CEO of it, or involved in the day to day, or even defining kind of being the leader to define the strategy or vision for the company, I've made a mistake, right? That's my goal, not to do that, because it's not the best place for me. It's not scalable as well. But in terms of what I do with the companies, I've spent a number of years just going through and realizing, hey, when you look at business, it kind of all tastes like chicken.
every company has the same fundamental kind of 15 to 20 problems that are the big things they're trying to do, right? They're trying to sell things. They're trying to recruit staff. They're trying to retain that staff. They're trying to tell their story to customers, right? All of those are pretty universal. They're trying to figure out what their strategy is. Like every company does those things. And to me, like the realization I had when like all business tastes like chicken was, hey, there's got to be some people out there who've gone through and identified these kind of common problems, like how do I hire well, right? And built systems around those. I don't have to recreate the wheel, right? And so that's, I think, kind of the beauty for me of what I've done is I went and spent several years going and looking at these common problems, identifying the best systems that are out there, and then putting those into a thing I call the playbook, which sits on my website, and basically use that as the way that I can, when I get attached to a business, I say, okay, well, here's how we're going to do strategic planning. Here's how we're going to do hiring. Here's how we're going to run our board. And like, that means I'm not having to recreate the wheel every single time. It also gives me, when I interface with a company, a very common language where I can say like, okay, tell me what your 10-year vision is. I don't ask about the 3-year vision. I don't ask about the 5-year vision because I know they're using a system that has a 10-year vision. So that's the core of it in terms of how I approach stuff.
Okay, so let's just touch on like one or two of those in a little bit more detail. So you mentioned the 10-year plan. So talk to me just about a little bit about that system and what gets implemented there.
So the system that we like to use for strategic planning, meeting cadence, and all that kind of stuff. It's an off-the-shelf system called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. There's a bunch of these kind of things. The short-handed way I describe these are like business paint by numbers. Like you remember the old like paintings you would do as a kid, and they're like paint green here. Well,
I just put out a tweet on something paint by numbers today, and subconsciously it probably seeped into my brain from reading your work.
Yeah,
so I should probably give you credit.
There you
for
go.
that.
Well, it shows our age. So for example, in this case with EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's a set of ideas, templates, processes, and rules that you follow to run your business. And those very specific rules force you to do some very positive things, right? So, for example, it makes you write your entire strategy for your business and your big vision all the way to what you're doing this quarter on the front and back of one piece of paper. Like, when was the last time you like talked to a company and they could articulate in that way their entire plan on the front and back of a piece of paper? Like, this system forces you to do that by giving you a set of rules and guidelines and templates that you go and fill out. So at the core of that EOS system is a 10-year vision. Like, that's the top of of Mount Everest for you, right? And that's what that is. And then what you do is you take that and you tie it all the way back down to what we're doing this particular quarter and therefore this particular week to tie all the way back to that kind of 10-year vision. So EOS is one of those systems. And I don't make any money from it. It's a book you can buy on Amazon for like $12. It's written by a guy named Gino Wickman.
Yeah, you should be getting commissions on that, and you should be getting commissions on like Culture Index and the book by
Brad.
Top Grading, the book by Dr. Smart. Yeah. But you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart. Or I think what I've heard you say before is that you roll these systems out to the management of all the companies that you're involved with, and you say, let's use this unless you know of or can find something better. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the deal. I've learned, like, when I take valuable information like this that I've learned and lessons learned, and I share that with the world, over and over, what I've learned is the universe pays me back 10x whatever I give it, and I don't even really need to ask for anything. So that's why I approach all this stuff, which is like, here you go, like, fine, you like it, it's great. And the second thing that it's very relaxing for me, because if I just give you something for free, then like, I definitely don't feel bad if you don't listen to me. Like, I don't care. Like, whatever you want to do. Like, you want to just keep doing something stupid, I don't care. It's not my problem. Whatever you want. But if you sell something to someone and they don't follow it up, like, then that totally changes the equation for me. Then I have to worry about, well, did I explain it to you well enough? It's like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, let's just touch on Culture Index real quick too, because I know that's another one that you've kind of rolled out among your companies. What is Culture Index, and and how do you use that?
Yeah. So, this all kind of ties back to the idea of kind of theories of personality, that people are just wired with personality traits that usually get solidified sometime around their teenage years. And it's just how you are, right? You know that cousin that's just like the YOLO, let's jump out of the plane cousin. And then there's the other one who's like, whoa. 401ks are very risky. Like there's that whole spectrum of people. And then, people that like me that want to live in the clouds and think about the future. And then there's the person who their entire lens to look at the world is, here are the rules. Here's what's always worked. I'm just going to keep doing that. Like, so there's these theories of personality around that. And people have run into things like Myers-Briggs or DISC or StrengthsFinders or whatever, type personality assessments. There are two personality assessments that I like more than all the other ones. And there's reasons for that. One is called Culture Index. That's the one I use pretty religiously. There's another one called Predictive Index. And they're basically two flavors of the same thing, which is a science-based way where they went and did studies of tens of thousands of people, asked them questions, interviewed them, understood how they ticked, built archetypes around those. And then basically you can give somebody an assessment that takes them about 10 minutes. And it basically accelerates the whole process of me learning how they tick and what drives them and all that kind of stuff, by just looking at a graph that I can see in a couple seconds. So as a very powerful example of like using Culture Index or Predictive Index, there is a subset of the population that is just entirely wired to want to win. Like they are just the most competitive people. Like that is what drives them. And you can run into those people. There's 5 to 10% of them in the population. They're highly competitive. They are totally motivated by that. And I know if I'm working with a person that is wired like that in my organization, I know how to work with them, right? I know, okay, I'm going to show you how the score is kept, and then I'm going to show you where the scoreboard is, and I'm going to get the hell out of your way. That is entirely different than somebody who is motivated by, say, social harmony with everybody. And I'm going to approach them totally differently. So a tool like Culture Index, you give it to people, they take it online, takes 15 minutes. And then once you're trained in the system, you can look at the results and then meet people where they are and say, okay, this is who you are. Like I'm going to build the opportunity. I'm going to build the support system. I'm going to build everything for you based on the way you're wired. And I'm not going to ask you to be something else.
I kind of want to apply for a job to work for you just so I could take this. Like, I'm super curious at like where I would come out on this scale.
It's free. I'll send you the link. You can take it. I'll send it to you. Just let me know.
That would be cool. Okay. I sort of suspect I might come out similar to where you are on this in terms of like, being a more strategic thinker, being more kind of future oriented, being more kind of, I can't remember if it's right brain or left brain, but more kind of creatively oriented and less focused necessarily on like the minutia of every single detail and all that kind of stuff. But it would be a really interesting thing just for some self-awareness to understand where you fall.
Well, here's the thing that'll mess you up. This is super cool. There are a couple of, so they break down, there's like 20 archetypes or so. And these are like kind of people who congeal around. You see a lot of patterns and stuff. There are a couple of archetypes that show up in a outsized manner on Twitter. So when I meet people on Twitter, I'm predisposed to assume like, okay, you're probably XYZ archetype. And I know I'm one of those archetypes. There's one archetype that really loves to just talk about ideas and be creative, but doesn't like to be held accountable or responsible for stuff. Like that's me. So Twitter's full of those people, Cause you think about it, it's great.
I fear that might be me too. But you're playing 3D chess. You're playing 3D chess with this stuff. If you know like what category everybody fits into. I haven't done that one. I did Myers-Briggs once or twice back.
So do you know how Myers-Briggs was created?
I think I was
Myers and Briggs had this idea of the theory of personality, and it was a mother-daughter team who invented it with no science whatsoever in their living room. Yeah, there's a book on this. I was like,
no kidding.
This is why I hate Myers-Briggs. This is freaking terrible. That and DISC, no science, like total garbage science. It's why.
So there's no science.
It's why you can't use them for hiring because they're like racially and age and all this stuff biased. So you want to use a system that has been proven to be actually age unbiased and all that kind of stuff. And it's actually super powerful because it allows me to actually be more diverse in hiring. Because like I don't even look at your resume until I know what your personality is and I know you're a fit for what we're doing.
Wow. Interesting.
I might glance at it.
Wait, so do you go into the job knowing, okay, I want somebody who like fits this, is like this, or this? Like how many different archetypes?
They have
does
like
it spit out?
20,
20
21,
or something?
22.
Okay. And so do you go into it being like, I want somebody like with like one of these 5 or something like that? Or how would that?
Yeah. So the tool, what the tool is great is it has 2 insights. So one is, it number one acknowledges the idea that homogeneous teams are the ones that are heterogeneous teams are the ones that win. So that means teams that are wired differently. Like you don't want a bunch of people who are all idea people, right? Because what's wrong with that? You end up with ideas and no execution. You also don't want all execution people because like they're eventually going to just blow themselves up. Like, so you have to have a balance. So it has this idea that the best teams are all heterogeneous. Okay. So in terms of how people are wired from a personality standpoint, background, all that kind of stuff. So number 2 is when you say that that's the way it's going to be, you realize that different roles require, or the people who thrive in different roles, like they are wired to thrive in those roles. So let's say, for example, I ask you to go be a car salesman, right? Or a saleswoman. That is a certain type of selling and extroversion and fast moving behavior that only a certain number of people are wired to be that way. Like, me, I would hate that. Like that's just the worst. Like I couldn't handle all those interruptions and the extroversion of people. Like I would just be exhausted every day. But there are people who thrive in that type of environment. You know, that's the idea is you have these kind of roles where you understand what's required of a person. And then you're able to create a situation where that person can just be their best self just walking in the door. Cause they're just like, oh, this is who I'm supposed to be. Like, oh, like, accounting, like I'm supposed to follow rules, like let's do it. Like I hate rules. Like no way would I be an accountant. Worst job ever. Repetitive rules, give me a break. But like there are people that love that. Like so a tool like that helps you find those people and then help them be their best selves in that role. Like it's just the best feeling in the world when you can help somebody do that.
Yep. Makes a ton of sense. Just provides kind of a natural tailwind behind them for success for them. And
it's easy
and
for
the
them.
Team. That's awesome. Okay. We're not going to do the systems that you implement in businesses justice in this conversation, but that's a great taste of it. What I will do is link to some prior podcast appearances that you've had, some Twitter threads that you've written, because what I would just like to, put out there is that anyone who runs a business today, whether you're an entrepreneur or management within a larger organization, I seriously think you can benefit from a lot of this stuff that Michael's put out there, whether it's on hiring, whether it's on things like Culture Index, like you just talked about, just so much great stuff there. So let me just kind of put a marker in that because I just want to make a note of that. Okay, let's talk about all the stuff that gives Michael Girdley all of the time and energy to do all of this amazing stuff that you're doing across, this portfolio, this sort of portfolio of a career that you've built for yourself. And maybe let's start high level. So talk to me about, and I suspect the answer may be tied in with EOS, but talk to me a little bit high level, your approach to how you kind of go about strategically planning your life, your goals, purpose, things like that. How do you kind of set the direction?
Well, and for full disclosure, like kind of figuring out who I am, what I want to do, and where I want to go, like I'm 47 now. Like I'm also very, very comfortable acknowledging, like when I was 27, I don't think I gave very good answers, and I'm still not sure if my answers are that good. I just feel more confident in them. And
I mean, this is half the reason why I'm doing this podcast. I'm 44, and I'm like, what do I want to do when I grow up?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, data point for you, I turned like 45 or so. And I was like, I was trying to have this curious beginner's mindset, keep learning stuff. And I was just like, I look back on 45 to 35 and 35 to 25. And I was just like, I have learned so much. Like I feel like I've made such great strides. So I went around and started talking to like all the 65-year-olds. And I was like, okay, like I've learned so much in the past decade. Like, I just feel like I'm just hitting my stride, and like, this is just great. Like, I must learn so many things between now and 65. Like, what all am I going to learn? Like, tell me, like, what wisdom do you have to share for me? And they would all look at me like I was a crazy person. Like, it would be maybe people who ask that question are a crazy person, but they would look at me, and the answer I actually got was really fascinating. they were like, look, your learning curve is shallowing. There's only so many things that are useful in the world. And 45 to 55 is a lot of like practicing those things. And then they said, look, here's the thing you start to learn when you get into your 60s is that you're mortal. That was their answer. I was like, whoa, you start to see that the end is.
Not to get too deep, but I feel like just the last year or two, like that. I don't know if it's middle age or what it is, but I feel my mortality more than I've ever felt before. And like, holy shit, like a pretty large piece of this career is behind me. And like, if I have stuff that I really want to achieve, I kind of better get my ass in gear and get going on it.
And for me, there's times where I look at the mirror now and I'm like, oh, I am old. I feel old today. And like,
I felt old this morning, getting out of bed. Everything was creaky and everything like that. But that's why I'm hoping you have some good answers when we talk about your physical fitness and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. But let's start high level. Tell me about the plan.
You know what? I talked about that EOS system. I run a version of that for myself. Basically, I have a 10-year goal of where I want to be. I follow the EOS rules for that, and then I bend them a little bit because, as a person, you can't treat yourself like a business perfectly, but the same concept is there. Like I have a 10-year goal of where I want to be. I have core values of how I live my life. I have a strategy of how I'm going to get to my 10-year goal. That translates into a 3-year vision of where I want to be 3 years from now. Then I have a 1-year plan of things that I want to accomplish. And, the way this system works really well when you use EOS for yourself is you end up just defining the 5, 6, 7 things that are really super important that you have to get done this year. And the other stuff, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it gives you a ton of focus. And then I define quarterly goals and I check on them. Like this morning, I looked at them. I was like, okay, where am I on this one? I want to weigh this much. I want to, get involved in this project. I want to get this project done. I want to have this much cash flow. Like all of those were things I checked in on because they're the quarterly goal. And if I know if I'm on track for those, I'll be on track for my 10-year vision of where I want to be. So in short, that's how I run that system. It's pretty straightforward, pretty lightweight. I have it all in a Word doc. And it's so far worked pretty well. I started doing it since 2017, 5 years.
Yep. And you've published, I've seen a version of this, basically like one pager or I guess 2 sides of a page that you published on Twitter before. So you made that public, slightly redacted your net worth goals and things like that.
Try not to get murdered this week.
So let me ask you this. Is there one thing that you can point to that you could say, okay, like this tangible thing changed in my life after implementing this system? So I guess, is there like one example of something that you've accomplished that you would give credit to this system that you
yeah, for sure. I mean, just you look at kind of the high level number of the things I'm involved in. When I started doing this in 2017, it was basically 3. And one of those required me to work in the business. And another one of those 3 things was struggling and had to be turned around. So, it's made a transformative situation where like now I'm deeply involved in 9 different ventures. Looks like we're going on 10 because we're about to launch something else here shortly. And, that's been transformative. That high level number of things I've been able to do and do effectively has gone from 1 out of 3 to now, 9 out of 9, I would say, doing well, and things I'm very happy with, from a business perspective. So yeah, that's been transformative, and the discipline that the system has brought on for me, like I wouldn't have been able to do it without that.
Yeah, that's cool. So you said, okay, for example, like 1 year from now, like I want to extract myself out of the day-to-day running of said business, and what do I need to do? Then translate that down to like, how far do you go? Do you go down to like daily or weekly? Or, I mean, you said quarterly, but like, do you look at like your schedule and like, what am I going to do today to actually move the needle?
Yeah. So, I mean, I find just reminding myself of what those prioritized goals are, allows me to just stay focused on them, and I make sure that those get done. Other people use systems where they go in and like color code their calendar and stuff. To me, that feels kind of onerous. There's also people who do a lot of personal planning around like, okay, I'm going to build these habits, and like, I don't work that way. So I don't know if that works for them, great. But no, I just keep it super simple. It's like, okay, I'm going to focus on these 5 to 7 things I really got to get done this quarter. And then I'm just going to make sure I focus on those things and get them done. But I'm not going to like micromanage like what I'm having for lunch in order to optimize that stuff. Unless I'm trying to lose weight, then I will definitely micromanage lunch, or I'll weigh myself every day and just be like, hey, lose some weight, you fat chump. So
it's interesting for me to hear about like the way that you operated day to day. Because like going back to like what we were just talking about a couple of minutes ago, like I kind of wonder if slightly different takes on systems like this would work for different personality types, you know? I don't know if we're going to solve that one today, but there's probably
I mean, for example, if you go look at Culture Index, it would tell you some people are very good at juggling a lot of balls, spinning a lot of plates at the same time. I'm actually very bad at that. I'm not good at if I have more than 2 crises at once, like I feel overwhelmed. Whereas like there are people for whom they are wired to be okay with like 30 initiatives going at once. I'm a very good serial monotasker. Like I can do one thing faster and more efficient than most other people can. I can't do 4 things at once. Like it just doesn't work. So I'm a very fast serial monotasker. So, you know, if you think about it, like this is kind of the system that works for somebody wired like me, like not an amazing memory, not a good multitasker, needs to be reminded what the goalposts are. And especially since I'll try to move them all the time, just being who I am. Like I need a system like that that's simple, automatic, reminds me of stuff. Other people who are wired different ways, like you can work with different systems. And I think this is kind of a testament to just kind of the core idea. Like whether you're using StrengthsFinder for personality instead of Culture Index, or whether you're using some other system instead of EOS for running your business, it doesn't really matter. Like 70% of the goal is just being intentional about it and having a system and running that system and sticking to it. So, you know, whether you use my system or another one, like just pick one. That's going to get you most of the way there.
Yeah. To me, and it's funny, I've been thinking about this, even just how I'm running this podcast. I kind of started out, it's still early stage podcast, but I kind of started out and thinking about, okay, we want to talk about habits, we want to talk about careers, we want to talk about motivation. And I don't think I've really kind of identified like a niche for this podcast necessarily. It's fairly broad, but I keep coming back to this idea of like systems, and even more, and to use the paint by numbers analogy again, like it's becoming like clearer and clearer to me that like systems in many different ways, not just running business, but also running your, you know, fitness and nutrition, et cetera. Systems are like cheat codes for life, basically. And they are almost like paint by numbers, right? And it's like, okay, I can avoid decision fatigue, et cetera, if I just have a very clear cut system. This is what I'm doing every day. I already know in advance and I just need to like make it happen. And so anyways, translating that to like this podcast and, you know, some of the questions I want to ask you now is kind of like understanding, okay, you know, how are high performers in different areas? What systems are they actually implementing in their own lives to, you know, manage their time and energy and stuff like that? So I think I'm slowly like navigating my way towards like a niche for this podcast. Anyways, sidebar there. So let's talk about energy management. And you need a lot of energy to do a lot of these things, even if you are not necessarily multitasking, but you are focusing intently on one thing at a time. You are still getting a tremendous amount done every day. So I would guess maybe some of that starts with sleep. I've heard you before talk about or say that you go to bed at 8:30 p.m. I want to understand if that's true, and how is that on
to go to sleep at 8:30? It's not hard. You just get sleepy and go to bed. I don't know.
Yes. Don't you have other people in your life who are wanting your time at 8:30 p.m.?
You know, like my wife and I have a rule. We don't have serious conversations after 9. It's pretty good because we're both like super cranky.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, I'm the cranky one. She's lovely all the time. But no, I like to wake up early. I like to go exercise usually. And so if you're going to be sane doing that, especially if you're somebody that needs a lot of sleep, I'm somebody that needs a lot of sleep. You know how you have that one family member that like everybody's like wide awake on a red eye plane, and there's like cousin Jim who's over there just like passed out and has been the whole time.
Oh yeah,
I'm cousin Jim. Like I'm renowned around the group for being like, is he asleep again? Like, yeah, I was at the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting last week over the weekend, and yeah, I totally passed.
Oh yeah.
Great thread. When I was like, I just passed out for 10 minutes. What happened? It's because I literally fell asleep in my chair. No, I did.
Come on.
I mean, the problem, with the Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, the problem is they're 91 and 98 years old. So they only got through nine questions in the whole day because like they ask you the question, they equivocate on it for a bit. They tell you some story about the Flamingo Hotel in Vegas in like 1955 for 20 minutes. And then you finally get to the answer with Warren. And then Charlie makes some quip and they move on to the next one. But 30 minutes just went by. So I fell asleep during one of the stories because it was just so long.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so I like to go to sleep early. And I'm just somebody that I've learned I need a lot of sleep and I perform better when I do. So, there's been times when I've gone to bed at like 8 o'clock and fall asleep. So I have a whole routine to go to bed.
Yeah. I'm kind of jealous.
It wasn't that way when I had little kids, but now that I have teenagers,
I have 3 little kids running around this place that are keeping me from doing that. But are you like anything else on the sleep side? Are you like an 8 sleep guy or anything like that?
I've never tried those. I sleep on a regular bed. I do have a routine to help me go to sleep. I listen to podcasts. Like there are certain podcasts that will put me to sleep in like 5 minutes, and that just turns my brain off, and I go straight to bed.
I host another one on financial markets. I'll send you that one. That's I've heard that's a good one for sleep.
Sounds great. Yeah, and then my alarm.
Okay.
I'll get up a couple times during the night to go to the bathroom. I have to be very mindful when I wake up in the middle of the night. I've learned the hard way. You don't let your brain go places you don't want it to go, and get yourself upset. That will keep you up. And you'll see the kind of REM cycles. I'll go through 2 or 3 a night, and then alarm goes off at 5ish, and then I'll.
Now, how do you know what the REM cycles look like?
I did use watches and stuff like that to track it. Now I just know it's when I have to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And you can tell. You can also tell where you were in the cycle by how hard it is to get up. So getting up getting up every day at the same time is very beneficial because your body starts to learn and orients its cycles around that. So like I know, like when I'm on a good routine, like my body will say 4:50 a.m. Like sometimes I'll just wake up because my body's like, yep, that's the way this goes. Like right now is when we go through REM cycle number 3 and we're good. And then, I get up and go hang out for a bit till it's time to go to the gym.
Yeah. I'm similar, although I over-engineered a little bit. I've got like the Whoop on one arm, the Apple Watch on another. I got 8 sleep. So I got like 10 different things telling me how I slept last night, which, you can argue there's pros and cons to that. Like sometimes if you see you had a terrible sleep, it probably like impacts you mentally in some way heading into the day. But it's also interesting to see one thing that's jumped out to me is alcohol, like absolutely trashes the quality of your sleep. Some stuff like you mentioned, being careful where your mind goes in the middle of the night. Like I am careful for exposure to bright lights. I think that can throw off your circadian rhythm a little bit as well. And I'm also a big proponent of the get up at the same time every day. So my alarm goes up at 6, and that's pretty much a daily thing, weekends included now. So I think that's just one of these things of getting older too. You got to kind of keep yourself on a schedule, right? Otherwise your sleep schedule.
Congrats, you're old.
So you're getting out of bed to go work out in the morning. So tell me what that fitness routine looks like, and interested if there's anything on the nutrition side that you do that's special too.
Well, I mean, as I'm getting older and my kids are getting older, so I have more free time, I've turned into that dad who doesn't sit still all weekend. And also just there'll be times when, it's the afternoon and I'll be like, hey, you know what I should do? I'll go for a 20-mile bike ride. That sounds like fun. So I really have found the right system to have in middle age for fitness is to do a lot of stuff and then make sure that stuff has two different aspects to it. So one is it needs to be challenging but fun. And there are things that I do to make exercise fun. The second thing that's super important is your exercise routine needs to have variety, lots of variety in it. So the fun aspect of it is I do a ton of things where I gravitate towards exercise modalities that to me can be turned into fun. So they're either social outlets or I combine them with other positive habits. So for example, I go to CrossFit classes like all the time. And so we'll go at like 6:15 in the morning, class lasts for an hour, and then we go to coffee immediately afterwards. So there's like this great social and like chemical like reinforcement of that, and everybody loves it. And it encourages more people to come to the gym. And CrossFit by itself is pretty good with giving you tons of variety at stuff. But then I also spend a lot of time mountain biking, road cycling. Pre-COVID, I was doing a ton of yoga as well and just really enjoying that. And so that's kind of that second idea is, I looked at all the people who were my age or older and had broke like physically, like couldn't exercise anymore and gave up and let themselves go. It was because they all just kept doing the same one thing over and over again. Often, if it was at high intensity, that's how they broke themselves. Like they were triathletes and next thing you know, like can't walk. Like, well, that's dumb. Like that just doesn't work. Or they were doing it at such low intensity that it gave no benefit whatsoever. That, that guy that like walks 10 minutes on the treadmill and then does 3 curls and leaves the gym, like, give me a break. Like, not going to help you. So anyway, that's kind of my approach to the whole thing. And like, it's fun. It's great. I have so much fun doing it.
Yeah. I like that. Those are some great ways to think about it. Now the social, do you do much like solo stuff, or you mentioned the social aspect of CrossFit? I'm just curious because like I think what I understood you saying earlier was that you are maybe less of like a natural extrovert. Is that true? And like, how do you tie that together with like the social aspect of the CrossFit? Like, would you rather naturally be in your home gym, like getting a workout done and just doing
there's
it?
There's some layers to this. So introverts, if depending on your definition of the traits of personality, introverts are people for whom social interaction is energy taxing for them. It costs energy for me to go to a cocktail party. But if you take me to the gym where I'm doing something that I really like and I can feed into other things like my mission orientation, or even above that I'm a very competitive person, like those things can overcome all that stuff. So the fact like that kind of competitive urge that I have, like I can go to the gym and express that. Like, who cares about introversion at that point? Like, we're there to like kick some butt. Let's do this. So that's the other reason why social type stuff is really important to me. And I do like group rides for bicycling, or I do group exercise classes because I don't really want to be by myself because I want to beat you. And the best way for me to beat you is to be right next to you, suffering, and I'm going to outsuffer you.
I like that.
So, in the nicest way possible.
There are versions of that at home too. I have a Peloton bike where I get unnaturally competitive on the leaderboard with people who I've never met before. But you can engineer a little of that too. Yeah. How about the nutrition side? Any system or
I've played with all the different kind of diets and stuff. I think where I've ended up at this point is that number one, life is for living. So you should enjoy yourself here and there. Everybody can have abs. You know how to have abs. I've done it before. You suffer. It is suffering. You don't get to eat. You get chicken or broccoli. So that, that's all there. So, I think there's a healthy balance where, you obviously can't go full on Chick-fil-A every single meal, like, or McDonald's, like it's going to hurt you. But at the same time, you just focus on eating real food, mostly eat healthy as best you can, occasionally indulge yourself, and then, basically just optimize for health rather than for looks. And, that's how I approach it. So try to eat real food, try to balance it out. So nothing fancy. It's probably more akin to like a French approach to food where it's like, I feel fat. I'm going to eat less today. And that tends to help. One thing I do is I have a system where every morning I wake up and I weigh myself. And I know, like, for me, like, the number one indicator of overall physical health is what do I weigh? This morning I was at 230.2. I want to get under 228 this quarter. And I know that, okay, if I have that data point, it will change how I behave for the day. And that's just the simple system I run for that, is like, okay, like, don't eat a lot of carbs today, stupid. Lose some weight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Keep it simple. That daily check-in is probably an important one for you, just to stay on track. I mean, I've found I'm someone who works a little better with guardrails, and I go in and out of different phases. Like, okay, I'm super committed to low carb right now, or I'm tracking everything I'm eating that's going in my body via an app or stuff like that. But like, what happens with me over time is, like, I'll get really fired up about one thing, and then over time it'll just kind of trickle off, and I'm like, yeah, I'll have a bowl of cereal. Yeah, okay, fine. I can have cake or cookies or whatever. And then all of a sudden I'll, like, look down and I'll be like, what happened? Completely off the rails, like, completely. Yeah. And everyone's like, wait a minute, are you, like, really big into self-improvement and this and that? And I'm like, oh my God. Well, yes.
Have you ever seen, there was a study that came out that basically, here's what they did. They took two cohorts of people, they took a cohort of people, split them up in half, and they had one group, all they did was have them keep a journal of what they ate all day, and the other group just lived their normal life. What do you think happened? Are you familiar with this study?
I'm not familiar with it. Based on the way you're describing it, I'm assuming there was, like, no difference, or like, or the people that didn't journal did better. But
No, it's pretty straightforward. The people that had to write down what they ate for the day, they all lost weight. Yeah.
Okay. So, that actually makes sense to me. So, because, like, I was just playing around with this idea yesterday and thinking about tweeting something about this. It's like this idea of, like, what gets measured gets done. Because I'm using this app called Carb Manager, and it's a huge pain in the neck because you have to put in every single thing you eat during the day. But I'm like, okay, it causes me to stop. Like, should I go grab a handful of, like, 20 peanut butter pretzels, or I'm going to have, like, some first of all, it's a pain just to put it in the app. But second, so there's, like, a little bit of friction there. But secondly, I'm like, I don't want to put that in the app. Like, I don't want to. So there's, like, something that is stopping me from doing that. So
just try writing down everything you eat in a book for a month, and then tell me what happened. Well, it's this. What it forces it forces mindfulness to you about what you're eating, and like that kind of comes back to this theme that I talked about, right? Like, everybody wants to deploy these very complex, hard to use systems. And a lot of times, like, there's this solution that's maybe 90% as good. And you just, like, do something really simple, like weigh yourself every morning. Like it doesn't require the complex kind of third order, like, things that people want to do. It's a lot of times just like, tell yourself every day if you're getting fat. Like, it's pretty straightforward. So anyway, I would say try it, because that was something I really took away from reading that study. I was like, oh, like, just keep things simple. Like, why complicate? It doesn't have to be complicated. That's what the world wants you to buy. And you don't even have to pay any money.
True. I like that. This is a theme with you. Just this free knowledge, getting it out there. You mentioned mindfulness. Talk to me a little bit about mental health. Is there anything that you do to kind of take care of yourself?
Yeah, I mean,
mentally?
I think that I have developed habits just based on a level of self-awareness and mindfulness about stuff. Like, those are positive feedback habits. So, I think when you practice mindfulness, which is being aware of, not only how the things in the world make you feel, but how certain thoughts and thought patterns make you feel, and controlling kind of that monkey mind that is, down here in your lower brain that wants you to do stupid things. And the upper mind being able to say, oh, okay, well, I'm feeling angry at this person. Let me think about that before I react on it. So that's mindfulness to me. And, I think that level of mindfulness, and fortunately I've grown up in a place where, like, I don't suffer any mental health issues that I know about. I mean, maybe they're in there, but we'd have to go dig around, see what's floating around that I don't know about. They're not explicit.
I can ask some of our listeners
Well, I mean, so
diagnose
you do have
after
questions later on this about my Twitter stuff. And one of the things that people joke about on Twitter is they've never heard me say a mean thing like to anyone on Twitter. And that's by design. And also I'm just not a mean person. But I would say that's kind of the key thing. Like, I'm very fortunate. I know other people suffer from depression and all kinds of things. This is just something that I don't have to worry about much. It's also, and I feel kind of bad about it. Everybody wants to talk about mental health. Like, it's in the category of things that I'm just like, well, that's not very interesting to me. And I'm glad other people are pursuing it, but also I don't spend much time thinking about it at all. Like, I just focus on, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to think the best way I can think. I'm going to change my thoughts as I think they make sense. I'm going to take outside stimulus from the world and I'm going to decide how I'm going to react to it. Like, I just do those basic things. And then for me, I'm fortunate that I just don't go bad places. So.
Now, the way that you describe that is that sort of almost like arm's length of being able to, recognize like an emotion in yourself, like anger. So that's obviously like a massive focus of mindfulness and meditation teaching. And, a big part of developing a meditation practice is trying to get to see that, right? So it's like, instead of this idea that I am my thoughts, it is like, okay, I can actually see there. That's anger right there. And let me just recognize that. And even just having that arm's length away from that emotion and not being that emotion is just massive in terms of how you decide to react. Is that just natural within you, or have you practiced meditation or anything like that to try
I know
to
people love to
that?
meditate. I've tried it like 3 times, and I think it's in the bucket of things like learning to play an instrument. I can't do it. Never will be able to do it. I've 3 times in my life I've tried. I'm like, I'm terrible at this. Meditation,
It may just kind of come naturally to you, though, that the way you're kind of viewing yourself and the way you're kind of naturally seeing.
I mean, these aren't natural, innate kind of thought patterns. Lots of reading of books. Zen Buddhism. There was a while where reading Dalai Lama books was really popular. All those kind of mindfulness ideas. Like, I've read all that stuff like that. I read that stuff in my 20s and 30s. And, I think only in my late 30s and early 40s have I become a pretty good practitioner of it. I don't think I actually got any smarter. I think just hormones have changed. It's just like, I don't really want to punch anybody in the face, mostly because I have like 47-year-old man testosterone. Like, why would I get in a fight with you? Like, it just sounds terrible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, there may be definitely a natural maturing element going on here. Okay, time management. So we talked about energy management. That's what I would put it, the broad category of stuff that we just talked about: sleep and nutrition and fitness, mental health. Let's talk about time management. So you're pulled in a lot of different directions. Is there anything system-wise that you're implementing here to try to really prioritize where you are actually spending
so I
your
think
time?
there's really kind of there's 3 parallel tracks of like work streams going on in my day, right? There is with everything project I'm involved in, there's like this ongoing cadence of nurturing, supervising, stuff like that. So there's like a cadence of meetings that I'll go to and interactions that I have there, everything from one-on-ones with CEOs to board meetings, right? Those are all kind of things there. Stream number 2 is like the new initiative stream. Like, there's things that are like, hey, here's my goal for the quarter. Like, I need to do this, that, and there's meetings and objectives that come there. And so those tend to get filled after the calendar is filled with those fancy reoccurring meetings. And then the third bucket is just kind of the slack bucket, where it's like, okay, well, don't fill up 1 and 2 because we need time to reflect or to recuperate or to work on, a Twitter thread I'm inspired about. Like, those are all things that is kind of that third bucket. And that ends up being that bucket that there's flex when the 1 or 2 buckets like expand. And so that's kind of how I look at it. If you look at what my day is, that's pretty much my day. Like, my calendar, I use a calendaring system. I have 1 calendar per venture. And those things get put on there. I'm managing that calendar, and then initiatives get filtered in. And then there's a bunch of blank space where hopefully I can do email or relax. Like, after this, I'm going to go lay down on the couch because I'm sleepy.
I'm completely taking it out of you right now. This is not.
Yeah,
this is not adding energy.
I'm
to
having
my
a ton of fun.
Apparently.
So the, but yeah, so so that's kind of how the day looks and how the calendar gets set. There are still times where, like anybody else, like the universe throws stuff at you in waves, and like I'll get pushed too far. And the inversion of all of that and making sure you have time for what's important is for me, I have to go through and be vigorous and like unrelenting about saying no to the stuff that doesn't matter. And that I've done more and more over the past few years as I've gotten more confident in things that I don't like or things that don't give me joy. So like I'm not on any nonprofit boards. Like I don't give money to causes that aren't the one thing that's important to me. And like that level of focus allows me to like have a lot more free time for the stuff that is really important to me. And so that's kind of the inversion of time management for me. It's just like if it's not a hell yes, like the Derek Sivers thing, I just say hell no. Like I'm just really comfortable saying no these days.
Yep. That's a great way to be. Now, do you just back to your calendar just for 1 second? Do you purposefully go into your calendar like weekly or whatever cadence, and do you say like, I want to block this time out just for myself? Is that a practice of yours, or is it just when times are free between other meetings that you don't have something?
Yeah,
scheduled?
I mean, I'll block stuff out when I don't want to have anything booked, but like. Right now, I've managed stuff, I think, in a way that's good enough that I haven't felt so stressed that I didn't have enough free time, or I would feel like I wanted to have free time instead of doing the thing that I was asked to do, right? So I don't know if that's the right answer to your question, but no, I mean, I'm supposed to drive home at 4:30 today. I blocked that out so nobody puts a meeting there. So, yeah, it's great.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious, and I may be stretched too thin across all of my different things, but what I've found is like putting an hour in my calendar to like, let's say I want to write a Twitter thread, putting that in my own calendar so nobody else takes that time.
Sure.
I found that to be helpful. Okay, we've mentioned Twitter threads a couple of times. You've built a really awesome presence on Twitter, and actually, as I've prepared for this conversation and was going through a lot of the content that you've put out, I found your Twitter threads to be incredibly helpful. And I love the way that you have a pinned tweet on your Twitter profile right now it's basically like a thread of your best threads. And I'm like, first of all, like, okay, I've seen this before, but like, why am I not doing this? It was just, I mean, for something like this, there could not have been a more helpful resource to just see all your stuff in one place. Also, just random thought for you, going through all your content. I don't know if you've heard this from other people, but it actually inspired me to want to write more threads. I found just a tremendous amount of value there, and like I'm someone who puts out a lot of content in the form of podcasts and newsletters and stuff like that, but I have not cultivated that regular Twitter thread habit. But reading through your threads, I just found them so incredibly valuable. I was like, I really felt inspired. I was like, God, I need to.
You're like that chump did it. I could do it.
So, anyways, tell me about your. Tell me about your why you're doing that, why you're investing some of your valuable time there, and then like what your system is for creating consistently great content.
Thank you. So ultimately, like Twitter and social media, like first of all, I started doing it because I was really bored during COVID. There was nothing to do except sit at my house. So I'm a COVID baby for social media. But like the more I've gone into it, the more I've realized a couple things. One of those is very, very few people my age, like our age, are as a relative percentage of the population are actually out there being their real selves on Twitter or social media. Like it's so hard for our generation, but that creates such a big window of opportunity for people that are willing to do it, because like it is just this massive, for me, accelerator to all the things I'm doing. Right. So, that's how I think about it. If you think about, there's this flywheel that I do of, incubate new ventures, incubate new things, help them get developed and off the ground, and then supervise them and support them ongoing. Like there's that flywheel. And the nature of giving on Twitter or giving on social media or doing podcasts, like it accelerates it accelerates that whole thing. I'm not going to make money doing this, like, cause I'm not selling courses. I'm not like, we are selling ads on our podcast, but that's just because I want to hire staffers and editors to do the podcast, and I don't want to be doing it myself. And actually, we got that this year. We hired a general manager. He's a great guy, Mirko. He's running the podcast and like selling ads and stuff. It's like great. I just show up and talk. It's amazing. Highly recommend it.
Oh wow.
This is
Okay. I may need to bend your ear on that one. I'm not quite at that level yet, like 9 episodes in, but
we hired him. He's in Argentina.
Amazing.
We started a business. Me and a co-founder started a business a year and a half ago called hirewithnear.com, and that's how I hired him. He's in Argentina. I've never met him in person. We do everything in English, and he's running the whole podcast business. So like, yeah, it's the most Girdley thing ever. The second I got into it, I was like, how do I get out of this without it stopping?
Well, quick side note on that. I think there is an amazing opportunity for somebody to come in and take like all of the non-talking related work off of creators' plates. Like think about how many people have podcasts out there now, and just think about how everybody is like piecing together a system themselves in terms of like, oh, I got to edit this thing. I got to get clips out. Maybe there's a YouTube version, whatever. Everybody's piecing it together. I feel like there's an opportunity for like the AWS of like the creator economy to come in and like scale, have like a ton of editors and writers, whatever you need at scale, and make it super cheap for people and offer that service. Like, I'm just putting that out there in the world.
You have me until the super cheap part. That sounds terrible. I don't want to be any business is super cheap.
Okay, let's not say super cheap, but let's not say it can be expensive for individual creators today. So I'm sure there's plenty of margin there for somebody who can.
All that stuff's just a pain in the butt, and you got to figure out like I spent time yesterday, like, okay, here's what makes a good thumbnail for YouTube and here's what doesn't. Like, let me show you how it works. And, and the funny thing is so many of these creators, like they ultimately have no idea what really works. Like, especially in podcasts, people are just like, I don't know, Joe Rogan does it, so we're doing it too. Like nobody really knows because the analytics are just so terrible. But anyway, so Twitter, my goal is just like I've seen that acceleration and the lubrication that comes for everything I'm doing from Twitter. So like it makes everything better for me. So my goal is just to increase that magnitude. And this year, I'm close to 95,000 followers or so, which I know is a total vanity metric. It doesn't really matter. I did set a goal this year of trying to get to 150,000. The way you do that, frankly, is through threads. I know people will hate on threads, but threads are what gets you the followers. That's just the way it works. Threads and a good profile page. So I do it just because every dollar I seem to put into it pays me back 10, 100 times that in just opportunity from the universe without me ever really asking for it. So I love that kind of scenario.
Yeah. That's so cool. The age point on that one is an interesting point. I haven't heard many people talk about that, but I think that's totally true. And I think with our age group, there is this still really like a stigma of like, oh, you're talking to your internet friends or something like that, right? But honestly, like I think every guest I've had so far on this podcast has been somebody I've connected with on Twitter. And it's just been just this amazing platform to make great connections with incredibly smart people who you otherwise would have no exposure to or no reason to really interact with. And so, our generation is way behind the curve on that. But to your point, maybe that's actually an opportunity for those that,
I'm totally fine. I am totally fine with that. Like that creates a bigger window of opportunity because, people like there's younger people that want to hear from people our age, like, and they want to understand what we've learned. And if the other chumps aren't going to be out there our age talking about it, might as well be this chump. Like I'm cool with it. So.
Hey, they need to hear about getting a stretching habit in place early
so
on.
Huge.
Come on.
I mean, I've learned that from CrossFit, like the people that are physically mobile, like have good range of motion in their joints. They don't have like odd imbalances. Those are the people that stick it out. And, I watched people that were my age who kind of blew up and like disappeared when they turned 40. It's because they weren't like balancing out like that endorphin rush they were getting from working out so hard with like, oh, I'm going to do some maintenance and rest on my body. So actually me and a group, we started a thing we call Stretch Club. First rule of Stretch Club, you don't talk about Stretch Club. By the way, that is the most dating movie reference ever, but Gen Z and millennials don't get it. But we show up and we sign up for a service that gives us a different stretch routine every day. We show up 20, 25 minutes before class starts for CrossFit. We stretch together, make ourselves better. I changed the branding to Injury Prevention Club. So that works better than Stretch Club, and we've still get very few members. But it's just part of it. You got to build that in the routine. And that's the way to be durable. Like you just can't. Yeah. You can't expect your body to drive, just like you can't expect a car to run without changing the oil every once in a while. Stretching and good fuel is doing that.
Oh man, I feel like I need to go stretch now. Do you have any resources that you recommend for people who are like, okay,
I mean, if you want something simple, the one we do is called ROMWOD, ROMWOD. It's $18 a month or something. They give you a new video every day. And it's a lot of very long static holds for stuff. Around hips and ankles and shoulders and stuff like that. So, that's been very good. I really like, there's a guy named Kelly Starrett who's a physical therapist. He has some books called, Being a Supple Leopard, I think his name, STARRETT is his name. I've been to some of his seminars. So he just talks about ways to create more mobility in your systems, especially when you have, lack of range of motion, impingement, all that kind of stuff. He can help you deal with those kind of things. So those are the two kind of things I would recommend to people.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. That is something I am not doing enough of, so I need to get on that. Okay, we have come to the end of our conversation, and I appreciate all the knowledge that you have dropped here. I do have one closing question, and it's kind of broad, but I'm just going to hit you with it here. What's one thing in life that you have figured out thus far that you think maybe most others might not yet fully grasp? You already talked about stretching. So
oh man, that was so cool.
From using that one.
I don't know. I feel like it's a hard. I'm curious. What do you think my answer for this is? This is the total like Girdley, the total Girdley like punt on this. But I will give you an answer.
Okay. I might come back to maybe to something EOS related, and kind of like starting with these high level goals and then going down. I like that systematic approach to how you're managing your life. And then the other one I might say is maybe doing the introspective work to understand who you really are and what you can really exceed at, so that you can kind of set yourself up for do the work that you actually.
I dig that.
Really
I think another way of using that, talking about that second point, is like, acknowledging that you're a flawed human being on a journey with weaknesses and strengths, and then crafting your life around leveraging those strengths as best you can and compensating for the weaknesses as best you can. I see so many people just so motivated to try to be great at something that they either hate or they're not good at, or a combination of those things. And it just makes me sad, and I realize this is a somewhat privileged way of looking at the world, but like, it doesn't happen overnight. You work hard, and, I think you can get there when you are able to go into life and do what you're meant to do. Like, it's kind of beautiful. So anyway, I don't know. I don't want to be like an elitist jerk who came from a privileged home and, graduated college debt free. Like, it's pretty easy for me to be like all that kind of stuff. But I think that kind of self-realization that we're broken and that you just should enjoy the journey and be the best you can be. Like, stop worrying so much. Just do that.
Yeah. I like that. And I wouldn't be too self-conscious about coming from a privileged background and stuff like that, because I think you do a tremendous amount every day to kind of give back for free to people out there, like what you're learning along the journey. So you're very generous in that way. Well, Michael, last thing, where can people find you? Anything you want to
I'm selling a course.
Promote?
No, I'm
anything
not
like
actually.
that?
I'm too lazy to make a course. Well, actually, I mean, the
Self-reflection,
economics are like, I'm not going to dig on people like with a clear, like click to close funnel because like, I understand, like do what's right for you. Like I have no problem with that. For me, it like, I'm in the bucket of like the return on investment of teaching a course or doing a paid course. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like it's just the amount of time I would spend to put that together and make it as good as I want it to be. Like there's easier ways for me to make a buck. So like that's ultimately why I don't do it. And but not knocking on anybody else doing it. Like by all means, like you do you. Like whatever. I'm not going to stop anybody from what they do. So, yeah. So 2 ways you can join along with me. Twitter at Girdley. Girdley. That's my last name. So I paid some guy $100 in North Carolina to give me the Girdley handle a few years ago. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that, but he was really nice. His name's Girdley too. He's like, I don't get this Twitter thing. That's what he told me. I was like, oh, cool, I do. So yeah, so at Girdley, and then my website is girdley.com. Awesome. You know, a lot of the stuff I talked about on here is talked about in blog posts or on posts on there. It's all free, nothing really to sell you. And then I do have a newsletter that I am collecting email names for, and I have not sent out anything to it since February. So I'm doing great. So check all that out.
If you wanna be on a newsletter where you're not going to
get 0%
spam,
it also has 0% content at the moment. So it's going pretty great.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, Michael, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Really appreciate your time. And I would encourage everybody to go check out Michael's stuff and the places he just mentioned, because you will come out much richer in many different ways from engaging with that content. So appreciate your time today.